Hello again, this is Steve, and what a beautiful day. Look, it's November the 4th, and the Indian summer is on its way out now, but it's still very nice. Nice and sunny here. I've walked over to my local cricket field. This is where I cut my teeth on the Deus. It brought me out 400 plus coins on 2 acres of grass. I didn't, of course, go on the square, but I was given permission to dig anywhere else, and have still got loads more to winkle out. Now this brings me on to my subject of winkling out coins. People have said to me, Alan M77, you keep mentioning you've got this favourite program for winkling out coins, especially your Denarii 110 coins from all the rest of the clutter. How did you do that? Well, I was cutting my teeth then. I'm still a newbie even now. I found the hoard after 10 weeks, and that was a shock because I didn't quite know much about the Deus. I'm still learning. In fact, I'm still learning. I still don't use all the features on this at all, and I've got the full one with the remote. Some people haven't got that. I'm going to give you some tips now where you'll need the remote, or at least you can borrow one from someone else just to program your coil and your earphones, and then you can have them set in number positions 11 and 12 or whatever. But I cut my teeth on that hoard, so 2 remarkable things happened to me. One, I found the scattered hoard, and over a period of 6 weeks trying to find them all, I learnt a great deal from doing that. So I'm going to share with you one of my programs. I have now got to trust my ears, and I don't quite rely so much on the numbers. I use them as a guideline, and I use the remote to see how deep, in the right hand side of the horseshoe, how deep the object is sometimes, so I know how much of a plug I've got to dig. But really that's about it. That's all I use it for. I can take it off, put it in my pocket and just use my ears. I use this and carry it on my stem so I can change some settings. Why when I change settings? I'm going to try and tell you now how to winkle out the smallest coins. Now when I mean small, I mean small. Okay, there's a UK 10p. We're all familiar with the UK 10p. Okay, compare that to the UK 5p. Okay, it's much smaller. But if you're going to be looking at 6 to 7 inches, that's going to be easy. If you want real depth, how's about that? That is a tiny, weeny Spanish quarter real found on Sunday. 5 to 6 millimeters across, ultra thin, perfect condition. I found that 6 inches with the Deus 13-inch coil, and this is how I did it. Now bearing in mind I'm going to get slated for some of this, but you must remember I'm still a newbie. Just because I've found a lot of coins and various other bits and pieces, and I've made lots of videos, it makes me no more of an expert on Joe Blogs with his Deus. This is just my favourite setting, and I can tell you now, if you're going to just be sticking to the preset programs, you're going to be missing so much. You really are. And if you think, well, I can cope with that, you believe me, when you're detecting with someone like me who's using the basic settings tweaked, and you're comparing your finds to their finds after a week or a month, you'll soon change your mind. So let me tell you now, I'm no expert. I've just found something which really appeals to me and works very well, and it's based on a standard Deus program, either number 2 or number 3. Number 2 GM power, number 3 Deus fast. Now they're exactly the same in my opinion, except one small difference, and that is the reactivity. So GM power is reactivity 2, which means it's already twice as quick as a standard coil, run-of-the-mill coil out there. But Deus fast is on reactivity 3. What we're going to do in this particular case is go through some settings that I use based on Deus fast, and before we do that I want to explain how I use the settings and then show you putting them into the remote. First of all, frequency. We'll get this out of the way. I'm not going to come back to this. Frequency. I use either 12 and 17 or 4 and 8, and I use those for ploughed and for pasture. So for ploughed, then I'm going to be using 12 Hz as the standard, and sometimes 17. Why? Because the soil is turned over every year or a couple of times a year, all the new stuff is going to be brought to the top. So you don't have to get really deep. You want to look for the good stuff that's in the top 4 to 6 inches, the really small stuff. Really small stuff. And 17 hertz picks out the really small coins. If you go down, you start to compromise the small stuff. So my basic for ploughed is 12 hertz, and sometimes I'll just knock it up to 17, play around with the two. I will tell you that 12 and 17 usually gives you problems with interference from power lines. So if you're on one, try knocking it up to the other or down to the other, and one of those should usually kill off the power line interference. Don't try knocking down sensitivity, because that doesn't really work. I've tried it. Pasture is 4 to 8. The standard for me is 8, because all the top stuff is usually gone in pasture. And even if you have got stuff in the top 4 or 5 inches, going to 8 is going to give you a little bit more extra depth. So you're going to get the stuff in between and a little bit more extra depth from the 8, because it's not being turned over all the time, because it's pasture. Occasionally, when you're after a little bit more depth, like for example, when I was going through the 110 Denarii in a 40 by 25 metre area, I picked out as much as I could. Picking through the trash, I wanted to get depth. So how do I get depth? 4 hertz. Swing very, very slowly and keep it very, very low to the ground. I even took a lawnmower to cut the grass on that piece of pasture. I know it's silly, but the extra couple of millimeters you can get could pick up the edge of another coin. So you're going to go 4 hertz is going to give you the depth. 18 hertz is going to give you the smallest coins. So the deeper you go with the 8 and the 4, the more you're going to possibly compromise missing the smallest coins. So I'm not going to come back to that. So that's one way of getting depth. There is another way also of getting depth. One is discrimination and one is sensitivity. You always knock your sensitivity up as high as you can get, starting at 90, 95, but if you can get 96, 97, because you've got no power lines anywhere near you, you haven't got anybody else with coils walking past you, get it as high as you can till you've got some chattering, and then just knock it down a number at a time until it stops chattering, and that is your maximum sensitivity. Now, that you can do in the field once you've got the basic settings all done. You just go to sensitivity, up, 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 down, down, stop, done. No more playing around to do. The other thing is discrimination, and this is what I really learned how to use properly when I was winkling out my hoard of Denarii, because I had to try and winkle them out through all the rest of the other bits of iron and stuff, and it was a trashy sight. So this is what I did. I started off with Deus FAST, reactivity 3, rather than GM power, reactivity 2. Just my personal preference. So first thing I did was took Deus FAST and saved it to position 11. Right, now I've got that now, Deus FAST saved in position 11. Okay, then you simply go to menu, discrimination 1. I don't like setting it at 0 because I believe, because I'm no expert, that will interfere, that won't give me what I'm looking for in iron volume. I might be wrong, but I'm happy just setting it at discrimination 1. In other words, I'm virtually knocking my discrimination completely off. So I'm going to hear everything. Discrimination, the more you put on, the less you get in depth. So obviously the more you knock it off, the more depth you're going to get. So you're now working with everything in your favour. You've got the reactivity, you've got the sensitivity, but also you've got the hertz, right, depending on where you are for maximum depth. Discrimination will give you the utmost depth. Next, iron volume. Iron volume is Deus FAST is 3. I'm going to knock that down to 0. And then back in the menu, I'm going to go down to notch, expert, and I'm going to increase notch from 0 to 25. And then save that. So now you've got all those settings done. That's saved into your position. I've got it in number 11 based on Deus FAST. That's given you reactivity of 3. Brilliant. The only thing really I've changed is the discrimination, knocked it down to 1, and iron volume, knocked it out completely. And I then got notch set from 0 to 25. Why? Because I won't then hear any signals. I've notched out the signals from 0 to 25. I still want them to be picked up by the Deus because I don't want to discriminate them out. If I discriminate, I lose depth. So by leaving discrimination at 1 or 0, I'm going to hear everything. I'm not discriminating anything. I'm going to hear all the junk, all the trash, all the iron, everything. I don't want that. So the way to knock them out but keep the depth is to notch them out. So notch 0 to 25, I've knocked out all the sounds. So the coil is still picking them up, it's just not feeding them back to my ears. You could do the same again and save it as program 12 and leave the notch off so you hear everything. It'll make no difference on the depth, but if you're in your mind thinking, have I missed anything, have I missed anything, at least you can just press a button and switch over to number 12 and try it. And this is a particularly good program for winkling out the small coins like that, little quarter real, which I found on Sunday, or the 17 to 19 millimeter silver Denarii, or the small 4 to 5 millimeter Roman minims. Perfect program for doing just that. So the only thing I would say you need to be aware of now, which will affect depth, is ground balance. And you can't do anything about that. The ground changes all the time. The only thing you can do with that is press the GB button, press it 3 times in the middle on the menu, and select tracking. And then your ground balance will be tracked. So if it changes with it. It saves you having to keep looking at it all the time. That does affect your depth. So keep your eye on tracking. It's probably the single most important feature of detecting, which a lot of standard detectors you can't change. With this one, you can watch it and you can track it. So use everything you've got to your advantage, and you've now got everything you need to go out winkling little coins from a trashy site or picking up the tiny ones at extra depth. I hope that helps. And don't forget, if you want to learn more about the air testing on the whole range, you wouldn't believe how many coins with the E-Track, then pay a visit to Pond Guru, link in the description, and shoot over there and have a look. Tell him I sent you, and you'll get some good information there from him too. Now for some detecting. I'm going to winkle out some more coins from this field. Catch you later.